The galaxy laughed when Earth announced its first prototype world. They did not laugh because they were cruel. They laughed because they were sure humans would fail. The project was called Project Ash, a distant planet placed inside a dangerous hunt zone, a world where thick forests blocked the sky, where the ground was broken and sharp, where massive creatures ruled the night. Every scan showed danger. Huge heat signs moved between the trees. Predators with claws, teeth, and instincts built for killing. No safe zones. No mercy. Alien experts studied the data. They compared it with 1,000 other worlds. And they reached the same conclusion. No intelligent species can survive there. Not without heavy protection. And humans do not have the patience for that. Earth's prototype was marked as a mistake. A learning failure. A warning example. The councils removed the project from priority lists. Funding stopped. Support vanished. And once again, the galaxy laughed. Some laughed openly. Some shook their heads in pity. Others already forgot the project existed. But Earth did not respond. There were no angry messages. No protests. No demands. Only silence. Months later, a single human ship entered the hunt zone. It was small, old, and carried no weapons strong enough to face the creatures below. Alien observers noticed it by accident. At first, they thought it was a mistake. A lost ship. A doomed crew. The ship landed near the forest edge. Dust rose. Wind screamed. And then everything became quiet. A few humans stepped out. They wore simple gear. No heavy armor. No fear on their faces. They did not rush. They did not panic. They stood still. They watched the trees. They listened to the sounds of the planet. Night came fast on Project Ash. The temperature dropped. And the forest changed. Eyes opened in the darkness. Heavy bodies moved between shadows. Low growls echoed from every direction. The hunters were close. Alien watchers leaned forward. They waited for chaos. They expected screams. Running. Blood. But none of that happened.
The humans lit fires.
They placed lights around a small open space. They worked together in calm silence. Hours passed. The creatures circled the camp. They watched from the dark. They smelled the humans. Still, no attack. This confused the observers. Predators on Project Ash never waited. They always struck fast. But tonight, they hesitated. When morning came, the humans were still alive. They had built a rough shelter, marked paths on the ground, and recorded every sound from the forest. Days passed. Then weeks. Strange reports began to appear. Movement near the human camp started to change. Creatures avoided the area. Hunt patterns shifted. Alien analysts checked the data again and again. This makes no sense, they said. The planet was supposed to break humans, not adapt to them. Then a simple signal appeared on the system map. Clear and human-made. Human camp. Active. The laughter stopped. The galaxy realized something uncomfortable. Humans were not just surviving. They were learning. And Project Ash, once called a failure, was slowly becoming something else. A warning. Because when humans were left alone, in a world where only monsters should live, they did not run. They stayed. They built. And soon, they would claim the hunt zone itself. The galaxy kept watching Project Ash, not because they believed in humans, but because they were confused. Humans were still alive. That alone made no sense. The planet did not change. The forest was still dark. The ground still dangerous. And the creatures still hungry. On the third night, the hunters attacked. A large shadow moved fast between the trees. Then another. And another. The ground shook as heavy bodies charged toward the human camp. Claws cut through dirt. Teeth snapped in the dark. This time, the humans were ready. They did not scream. They did not run. One human raised a hand, and the group moved as one. Lights flashed. Sharp sounds filled the air. Fire burst upward in controlled lines. The first creature stopped, confused by light and noise. The second stepped into a hidden pit and fell hard. The third turned away, injured but alive. The attack lasted only minutes. When it ended, the forest became silent again. Alien observers stared at their screens. No species had ever pushed back the predators of Project Ash. Not without advanced weapons. But humans used simple tools. Sound, light, timing. The next days were filled with work. Humans expanded the camp slowly. They cleared small paths, marked safe zones, and placed traps where creatures liked to walk. They studied everything. Footprints, broken branches, the way the wind moved before an attack. Every mistake became a lesson. Every night made them smarter. The creatures noticed the change. Some tested the camp again. They triggered traps, got hurt, and escaped. Others watched from far away, learning, waiting. But the humans learned faster. They adjusted traps, changed fire patterns, used higher ground. Soon, attacks became rare. Alien analysts began to argue. This should not be possible, one said. They are adapting too quickly, another replied. Project Ash was designed to punish weakness. But humans did not act weak. They worked together, shared food, protected the injured. When one human fell, others stood over them, unmoving, unafraid. The predators sensed this. The hunt zone felt different. After 1 month, something shocking happened. A massive apex creature approached the camp, bigger than anything before. Its roar shook the trees. The observers were sure this was the end. The humans did not fight it directly. They stayed still, raised their lights, and made the camp look larger than it was. The creature stopped, growled, then slowly backed away. That moment changed everything. From that night on, no large predator crossed the camp's outer line. The hunt zone had learned a new rule. Humans were not prey. The system map updated again. Automatically this time. Hunt zone status, contested. The galaxy fell silent. Project Ash was no longer a joke. No longer a failed prototype. It had become a test. Not for humans, but for everyone watching. Because humans were no longer just surviving on Project Ash. They were pushing back. And the hunt zone was starting to fear them. Project Ash was changing. Not because the planet wanted to, but because humans were forcing it to. The camp grew slowly. Never fast. Never careless. Humans expanded one safe step at a time. They built walls from stone and metal scrap. They raised towers just high enough to watch the trees. They placed fire lines that burned low and steady through the night. Every sound mattered. Every shadow was studied. The hunt zone watched back. Small creatures tested the edges of the camp. They stepped close, triggered alarms, and ran. Some were caught. Some escaped with injuries. All of them learned. Pain lived near the human camp. Alien observers noticed something strange in the data. Predator paths were changing. The forest itself was bending around one location. No beast crossed the same line twice. Humans added symbols around the camp. Simple marks on stone and metal. Warnings meant only for those who could learn. The creatures understood enough. At night, glowing eyes stayed far away. Growls were quieter. Footsteps slower. The camp had become a hard place to enter, and an impossible place to attack. Inside the camp, humans adapted again. They created routines. Guards rotated without complaint. Supplies were counted carefully. No waste. No panic. When storms hit, the camp held. When the ground shook, the walls stayed strong. Project Ash pushed. Humans pushed back harder. One day, a scouting drone from the galaxy moved closer than before. It hovered above the trees, watching, Below it, a group of predators gathered. Large ones. Smart ones. They had hunted together before. They had killed armored species. They had broken defenses. This time, they stopped. They watched the human camp in silence. Firelight reflected off metal walls. Human figures moved with calm purpose. No fear. No chaos. The predators waited. Then turned away. Alien analysts froze the image. "This is not natural," one whispered. Predators did not retreat without loss. Not on Project Ash. But now, they did. The system updated again. Not by human input, but by environmental response. Zone classification. Avoidance detected. The hunt zone itself had marked the camp as danger. The galaxy felt uneasy. Species that relied on strength alone would never survive here. Species that needed comfort would break. But humans lived in discomfort. They planned inside danger. Weeks passed without a single direct attack. The camp expanded again. Paths connected. Storage areas grew. Observation posts watched deep into the forest. The human camp became the center of silence. Around it, life moved carefully. Project Ash was no longer hunting humans. It was watching them. And learning to stay away. The galaxy finally understood the truth. They had not abandoned a failed prototype. They had abandoned a future stronghold. Because the humans were no longer guests on Project Ash. They were no longer survivors. They were owners of a space no beast dared to touch. And soon, the hunt zone would no longer belong to monsters at all. The galaxy could no longer ignore Project Ash. What was once a forgotten prototype had become a constant alert. Reports kept coming in. Predator movement had dropped near the human zone. Energy patterns showed organized activity. The hunt zone was changing shape. Alien councils gathered again. This time, there was no laughter. Screens showed live data. Thermal scans. Motion paths. Silence where chaos once ruled. One elder spoke slowly. "That area should be red with danger." "But it is empty." Another replied. "Empty does not mean safe. It means something stronger lives there." They zoomed in on the human camp. Walls reinforced. Paths controlled. Watch posts active day and night. Humans moved with purpose. Not rushed. Not afraid. This behavior confused the galaxy. Most species survived by hiding. Or by overwhelming force. Humans used neither. They prepared. They waited. They learned. A high-level probe was sent closer. Silent. Hidden. As it crossed the forest line, nearby predators reacted. They moved away from the human zone. Not in panic. But in decision. They chose distance. The probe recorded a clear pattern. Creatures hunted everywhere except near the camp. The hunt zone had drawn a boundary. Inside that boundary, humans ruled. The council archives were opened. Old human history played on silent screens. Images of storms, wars, disasters. One analyst finally understood. These beings are not built for perfect worlds. They are built for broken ones. That realization spread fear. If humans could turn a death world into a base, what could they do with support? With time, Project Ash was no longer labeled a failure. The classification changed. Status update, human-controlled zone. No celebration followed. Only quiet concern. Some species suggested intervention. Others warned against it. "Do not challenge them there," one voice said. That world made them stronger. From Earth, no message was sent. No demands. No threats. Humans simply continued building. New structures appeared. Long-term shelters. Signal towers. Landing markers. They were not planning to leave. The galaxy realized the truth too late. Humans had claimed more than land. They had claimed reputation. Once laughed at. Now studied. Once ignored. Now feared. Project Ash stood as proof that when humans were abandoned, they did not beg to return. They adapted until the world belonged to them. And every species watching understood one thing clearly. If humans could tame the hunt zone alone, then the galaxy had never truly understood what humans were capable of. And this realization made the stars feel very small. Project Ash was no longer silent because it was empty. It was silent because it was claimed. The human camp had grown into something solid. Strong walls, clear paths, controlled fire lines. The forest still lived beyond the boundary. Creatures still hunted each other, but none crossed into human space. The hunt zone had learned respect. Alien councils watched from far away. No one laughed now. No one joked. They spoke carefully. They moved slowly. Project Ash was added to every strategic map, not as a threat, but as a warning. Humans had turned abandonment into advantage. Inside the camp, life continued. Humans trained. They studied the land. They improved their defenses. Children were not there. Families were not there. This was not a colony. It was a statement. A message written in fire and patience. One final report reached the galactic network. Predator population stable. Human casualties minimal. Territory fully controlled. The conclusion was simple. Humans had done what no one else could. They did not dominate through strength alone. They dominated through understanding. They learned when to fight, when to wait, when to stand still. Project Ash had tested them, and failed. The galaxy finally admitted the truth. Earth's first prototype was never weak. It was unfinished. And humans finished it themselves. Years later, new species would pass near Project Ash. They would feel the silence. They would see the warning signals. And they would choose another path. Because the hunt zone no longer belonged to monsters. It belonged to humans. Those who once laughed now remembered a lesson. Never abandon humans in a broken world. Because they do not break. They adapt. They endure. They claim. And when humans are left alone, they do not die quietly. They build something the universe cannot ignore. Project Ash stood as proof. Not of survival, but of identity. Humans were never meant to be protected by perfect worlds. They were meant to master dangerous ones. And the galaxy would never laugh again.